I'm Salad, Mint Salad, and I Saw Casino Royale. It is directed by Martin Campbell, written by Neil Purvis, Robert Wade, and Paul Haggis. If you haven't seen this movie, I will spoil it for you. This movie starts and we're following James Bond and look into the past in black and white as to how he earns his 00 position. And then, after this cold open, it starts with the little shooty thing that each James Bond does at the beginning. So I think this is the only one that breaks convention. And then after that point, it's in color and it takes place in the modern day. What's interesting about James Bond, immediately I'm like, this looks much different than the other James Bonds. He acts in a colder, harder way than the other ones, but he looks different, and because of how he looks, I just can't get into the character of James Bond as much. Or at least at the very beginning, it's very noticeable. I'm like, oh, this is weird. Am I going to get used to it? And the answer is yes. This movie is Bond following this guy, the heels of this guy who makes bombs, and he's seducing his wife, and he actually is successful at doing so. And this guy that James Bond is pursuing, he's looking to make a bunch of money because he's taking whatever investment he's been getting and putting it in the stock market and gambling it away. And he has lost a lot of money, so he needs to have this really intense game of Texas Hold'em, which is honestly the best part of the movie, is just watching James Bond and this guy play Texas Hold'em, and they have a lot of money. I'm talking millions upon millions of dollars at stake. What I like about this movie is its pacing. It's very easy for me to follow the pacing and also the emotional beats of what's going on, and it seems like everything is progressing into each other and it makes a lot of sense. I also like seeing that during the middle of the poker game, James Bond, he has this classic drink that I wanted to make, but since it's a Sunday, all the liquor stores are closed. Rip Kentucky, I live in a dry county. Isn't it ridiculous that some places you can't buy alcohol on Sundays? It's actually kind of annoying. But anyways, so he has this classic drink, but the classic line from the previous movies is he wants a vodka martini shaken, not stirred. But this one, it's like parts of this and parts of this and the parts of this, plus a little bit of lemon peel shaken until it's really ice cold. And it's pretty intense. I was reading up on it, and it seems like this is a very intense drink. This is essentially a double drink. I'm like, oh boy, he has one drink, but the drink that he does is intense and is full of alcohol. It shows his character, major alcoholic, but is a high-functioning alcoholic. Of course, he's flirting with this guy's wife, and he has this nice little poker game that is the most tense thing I've ever seen. James Bond loses it all the first time, and then another guy who's like, oh, I'm on this guy's butt too, okay, I'm here too. He gives him some chips, and then James Bond ends up winning all, and I mean all, in like this awesome bet, right, where he gets like a straight flush, whereas this guy has like all these high level cards, and he's like, oh, I'm putting it all in. And then James Bond wins so many millions of dollars. I'm talking $110 million. It's a lot of money. And then this guy, he's so angry that he kidnaps James Bond and just starts torturing him. He's like, give me the money. And he's like, no, I don't want to give the money. And then there's also this chick that he's with. It's different than the wife of the guy. This chick, she seems to be really nice, but this movie teaches me a very valuable lesson, is to never trust them hoes, because this chick, although she appears to be in love with James Bond, and James Bond actually falls in love with her, which, by the way, the the actual James Bonds, they wouldn't be doing this. I mean, you got On Her Majesty's Secret Service where his wife dies suddenly after she's introduced suddenly, so that didn't really have much of an emotional impact to me. I think it was just a way to be like, oh, well, now he hates women because his wife died. But this one, he just loves this woman again, and then she actually ends up betraying him. She's stealing the money out of his bank account, even though it's supposed to go towards MI6. And so he's trying to go back to the money. And she's like, well, I betrayed you. I don't want to live anymore. And she ends up drowning. And I'm like, wow, that's sad. I think her name was Vesper or something. And so she's referenced throughout the other movies. And I'm like, I like how she's referenced because this movie really paints an emotional connection unlike the other movies. Even On Her Majesty's Secret Service didn't do a good job like this movie in establishing a woman that James Bond falls in love with, and then she eventually betrays him, and then she's like, well, I can't trust any of these hoes anymore. And honestly, I like how soft of language she speaks about her towards the beginning of the movie, and then by the end when we have like him escaping, he barely escapes with all the water, and then she drowns, and then the guy gets away and he's not able to get the guy. He talks about her in a very harsh tone, says like, oh, that bitch, right? Never used that word at all before this point, so it's very stark contrast. I mean, she was threatened, her life was threatened, so she had to become a double agent, but it's still kind of terrifying and sad and shocking that somebody you love would betray you like that. And that's what has spawned James Bond's trust issues, is because of this lady right over here. And then it just ends with James Bond just dropping her necklace and moving on. So this movie definitely hits the most emotionally for me. In terms of a standalone film, this is by far the best James Bond. However, in terms of placing it with the other James Bond films, it's kind of weird because he acts a lot different than the last James Bond movie, which was Die Another Day. In this one, it seems like he's a little bit more naive, a little bit less experienced. So it's weird. It's like, why is he acting like he has no experience with this? Why is he acting so surprised that all the hoes are betraying him? Like, even though the tension of this film is top tier, and I actually found myself yelling at the TV screen like, yes, I love Texas Hold'em. And watching this movie, I was like, man, I love Texas Hold'em. I'm not really much of a gambler. I'd play Texas Hold'em with freaking candy. I just like the card game itself. I don't even need to have money attached to it. I'll just play Texas Hold'em without money. That's how much I love the game. So I was watching it and I was like, this is awesome. I'm such a big fan. This is the most I've really had my eyes glued to the screen when it comes to a James Bond film. But in placement with the other ones, it's kind of weird. I don't know how to rate it for that reason. I mean, as a standalone film, it's great. As a James Bond film, there's some issues with it, like I mentioned. Surprisingly, James Bond only sleeps with one woman in this film. It seems like he's more interested in one lady throughout the film, more so than diverting his attention and going for many different ladies like a classic Sean Connery James Bond would do. But I do like the depthness that is created in this film. What do you think of Casino Royale? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Where would you place it on your James Bond favorite movie list? I gotta give it, Daniel Craig did a good job. I gotta give it, it's an 8 out of 10. If you like this review, watch another one on the platform really likes at $20 Dinos, patreon.com/ASEPresents, one movie review per 1 month. Go to this link tree to support the daily grindiness of all the daily movie reviews, so go here. And until next time, it's Salad Saw. I'll see you later, my sacred odds, bacon bits. Woo! I'm gonna go play some Texas Hold'em now. Bye-bye.